Have you tried to fix your partner? Or maybe just rushed to solve their problems whenever they complained? I bet it didn't go that well, did it? Oh, how do I know? Well, I tried to, but trust me, it didn't work either. But today, I have something better to offer you, so stick around to learn more. Hey everyone, on today's episode, we're following up on the previous topic of compassion and taking it to the next level. Last time we talked about compassion in a broader sense, its impact on mental health, physical well-being, and interpersonal relationships. But today, we're zooming in on the romantic aspect. How does compassion influence our dating lives and ongoing relationships? Why is it the solution? And most importantly, how to apply that into your life? And as I mentioned, here I'm talking from personal experience. And I admit, I didn't do a great job on this in the past. But I hope that you will learn from my mistakes the same as I did, and we can do a better job together in the future. To start, let's clarify again what we mean by compassion in romantic context. It's not just about being kind and understanding towards your partner. It's about actively seeking to alleviate their distress and contribute positively to their well-being, all while nurturing a healthy, loving connection. Compassion in relationships is the love that extends beyond the surface, goes into the very heart and soul of people, which is often defined as the unconditional true love. And today, we'll discover that it's actually something achievable, and we can even learn how to cultivate more of it in our life and relationships. Compassion is the foundation of a strong, lasting bond. It's the kind of love that goes beyond the passion and excitement of the early days or the honeymoon phase. It grows deeper and stronger over time, which allows us to see our partners for who they truly are, flaws and all, and still love them unconditionally. And as we mentioned also in the previous episode in more detail about the difference between compassion and empathy. So while empathy is understanding the feeling of others, compassion is taking it a step further by taking action to alleviate their suffering and distress. So why is compassion so crucial in relationships? To answer this, we need to delve into the psychology of attachment and emotional bonding. And to understand this more, we need to take a step back to one of our previous episodes. Do you remember the dating life in the multiverse? Well, there we discussed the attachment styles theory, which I highly recommend checking out if you didn't. But I'll now give you the luxury of a quick recap. Attachment theory is a cornerstone in psychology. It suggests that our early relationships with caregivers shape our future romantic bonds. Those who experienced compassionate, responsive caregiving from their mom and dad tend to form secure attachments in adult relationships. They are comfortable with intimacy and more resilient in face of relationship challenges. On the other hand, a lack of compassion in early life leads to anxious or avoidant attachment styles. Here's where the transformative power of compassion in adult relationship comes into play. Compassion can help heal old wounds and foster secure, loving connections. To say it more simply, practicing compassion for a person with anxious or avoidant attachment style could help them transform into secure attachment. This happens because of multiple reasons, and we'll explore them now. A compassionate partner can create a safe emotional space, allowing both of them to explore and express vulnerabilities without the fear of judgment or abandonment. And regular compassionate interactions can genuinely rewire emotional responses, shifting one's attachment style closer to secure. This is particularly due to neuroplasticity, and the brain's ability to change and adapt throughout life. Partners in a compassionate relationship can help others feel understood and valued, counteracting the feelings of insecurity or unworthiness that often experienced in insecure attachment because of these childhood problems. And the mechanism of how it works biologically relies on two factors. First, we have, as we mentioned also in the previous episode, oxytocin, where acts of compassion, including physical touch and emotional support, trigger the release of oxytocin. That's often referred to as the love hormone. And oxytocin enhances the feelings of bonding and trust. The second factor is in the brain, as engaging in compassionate behaviors activates areas of the brain associated with empathy and positive emotions, such as the anterior insula and the prefrontal cortex. And regularly practicing compassion strengthens these neural pathways, making compassionate responses more automatic over time. Additionally, we have the brain mirror neuron system, which is involved in empathy and understanding others' emotions. And this can enhance emotional connection and understanding between partners. And the most prominent result of compassion will show during the times of conflict. And I'm sure we all been through these times. Conflicts are inevitable in relationships. But how we handle these conflicts can make or break a partnership. This is where compassion really shines. A study in the journal Psychology Science shows that compassionate partners are better navigating conflicts, leading to more effective problem solving and less relationship stress. This is very insightful, and the reason can be explained by another relevant study published in Psychoneuroendocrinology titled Intranasal Oxytocin Increases Positive Communication and Reduces Cortisol Levels During Couple Conflict. The study examined how oxytocin administered intranasally, which means they allowed subjects to sniff oxytocin, influenced the behavior of couples during conflict discussions. The study found that couples who received oxytocin exhibited 15% more positive communication behaviors compared to those who received a placebo. And positive communication behaviors included more eye contact, friendly body language, and constructive problem-solving approaches. Additionally, the couples who received oxytocin showed a significant reduction in cortisol levels. It was 20% less, which is the hormone associated with stress, during their conflict discussions. So now, let's delve into the core of our discussion and describe how we can practice compassion effectively in our romantic relationships. So here are the practices that lead you to be a more compassionate partner. With every practice, I'll share what blocked me personally from achieving it sometimes in my previous relationships. So it might be insightful to be aware of these blockers and avoid them yourself. The first step towards achieving the more compassionate communication is to validate your partner's feelings. You don't have to agree with everything they're saying, but you can acknowledge that their feelings are real and important. You can say things like, "I can understand why you feel that way," or "I'm sorry you are going through this." And the main blocker for me on this point was actually judgment. I used to see my partner's feelings throughout my own lens. And I used to practice my judgment on many things that they express, which completely defeats the purpose of compassion. And this is usually an ego behavior or a defensive mechanism by our ego, where you think that you hold the true opinion. And to learn more about that, you can also check our previous episode on vanity. It has very insightful information about it. But the most important note to remember here is that this validation should be genuine, and it should come from your inside before saying anything out. Because with compassion, we can't fake things. our brains are evolved to detect faking signals, so it will not be perceived as genuine by our partners. The next method is active listening. Active listening is the foundation of any good relationship. When your partner is talking to you, give them your full attention. Put down your phone, turn off the TV, and focus on what they are saying. Show your partner that you are engaged in the conversation, using open body language, asking questions, and summarizing what they said. And the main blocker for me here was that I was pursuing what I call productivity. And I thought that I could be multitasking. Like while listening to my partner, I would do something on the side, like work on my laptop or do another task. So I thought that I was making better use of my time. But later on, I learned that multitasking is actually a myth and a killer for compassion, because our brains cannot be occupied by more than one task at a time. So you are either sacrificing the job in your hand or your partner's conversation. The next practice is to validate your partner's strengths, especially when they are struggling, because it can be easy to focus on their weaknesses and to observe their missteps or wrongdoings. However, it's important also to acknowledge their strengths. Let your partner know what you admire about them and how their strengths can help them overcome their challenges. And in my opinion, my main barrier here, even though I deeply valued my partner, I had unrealistic expectations. And this can lead to disappointment and frustration, which may overshadow compassionate feelings. In addition to that point, we need to avoid criticism, because it can be hurtful and make them feel worse about themselves. And when we practice true compassion, we look at our partner as a fellow human being with all their flaws and weaknesses, that it can be results from different events in their lives. Maybe they suffered from traumas. So our objective will be to release them from their suffering rather than criticizing them for things they had nothing to do with. Therefore, even in the times of disagreement, compassion helps partners approach conflicts with a collaborative mindset, focusing on understanding and resolving issues rather than winning an argument. It's about empathizing with your partner's feelings and perspective, even when you disagree. And most importantly, don't jump to solve their problems, because this will also make them feel bad about themselves, and it makes them feel that they lack the ability to solve it themselves. And this is not what compassion is all about. But now we come to a very important point, which is to understand the difference between compassion and unmanaged empathy. Because many people, they think that they're practicing compassion, but they found themselves out of the sudden overwhelmed and exhausted by their empathic emotions. And this is actually called unmanaged empathy, which refers to deeply feeling and mirroring the emotions of others without sufficient emotional regulation, which can lead to a state often described as empathic distress, which can also lead to emotional exhaustion and burnout. So instead of doing motivating constructive actions, unmanaged empathy can sometimes lead to a sense of helplessness, as the individual is too overwhelmed by emotions to act effectively. And you are more likely to experience this if you are a highly sensitive person or if you suffered from past traumas and emotional neglect. And usually, the main deep reason behind this could be emotional regulation challenges, or boundary issues, or low self-esteem. And if you find yourself falling under this category, the most effective way to deal with it is addressing the underlying issues that are causing it, where you can fix the root cause of this problem, either by multiple self-help techniques or seeking professional help. But along the way, you can follow many practices that help you better manage your emotions. Most importantly, practicing self-care, understanding that it's not something selfish, but it's a crucial factor to be able to care about others. Another thing is establishing healthy boundaries, which could be learning to say no or stepping back from emotionally charged situations. Another way out of this is practicing effective compassion, because compassion is paired with taking actions, which can release us from being overwhelmed with our own emotions. And another unwanted thing that we don't need to fall for when we are practicing compassion is turn it into overcare. The difference between care and while compassion is all about caring and loving, but the difference between care and overcare is when caring about someone turns into obsessive worry, anxiety, or projecting the worst. This usually escalates into emotional depletion and obvious stress. And to better understand the difference between compassion and overcare, let's take this simple example. Imagine you have a friend who is learning how to ride a bike. Overcare is like you are always holding the bike for them. Even after they started to get the hang of it, you are running alongside them all the time, never letting go because you're worried they might fall. But because you're always holding on, they never really learn to ride by themselves. And you get really tired from all that running. While compassion, on the other hand, is like giving your friend a helmet and some knee pads, and then holding the bike just in the beginning to help them get started. You are there to encourage them and help them if they fall, but you also step back and let them try on their own. So you care about them and want to help, but you also know it's important for them to learn on their own. And this is very important, because when care turns into overcare, which often involves neglecting our own needs, lead to burnout and even resentment for the people that we are caring about, which is definitely not what we want. And now let's get back to mentioning some additional ways that we can practice and foster healthy compassion in our relationships. As we mentioned previously, self-care and self-compassion are key skills on the way of compassion towards others, especially in our relationships. Being present and practicing some kind of mindfulness can also be very helpful in building self-awareness that can help us regulate our emotions and be aware of our feelings and how we direct those feelings to our partners. And as we mentioned in the previous episode, any kind of voluntary work or even small acts of kindness can help strengthen our skills of compassion. Another very powerful and effective way, which we also talked about in the past, is gratitude. Gratitude opens the doors for unlimited benefits in our relationships. It helps us seeing the positive side of our partner and to accept all their deeds and behaviors, and to see it as a whole as part of the human nature. To not focus on small things and small missteps, but to be grateful for them being in your life and giving you all their attention and all what they are doing currently. Because sometimes we take these things for granted, where we can't find their true meanings until they are gone. So take a moment to be grateful for all the things that they are doing, and don't hesitate or be shy to tell them that in their face. Let them know that you appreciate them, especially during challenging times. And when they are going through challenging time, they may need extra time or support. So be patient with them and don't try to rush them through their emotions. Let them take the time they need to process their feelings. And you can offer them support, ask them what they need from you, and be willing to help in any way you can, whether it's a listening ear or a shoulder to cry on, or practical assistance. But don't jump to solve their problems right away, because this might be counterproductive, as we discussed previously. And as we come to the end of this episode, I encourage you to take a moment to reflect on how you can bring more compassion into your relationship. Sometimes the smallest gesture can make the biggest difference. See you on the next one.